Well, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the Perfect Balance Power Hour show, where we're talking matters running and matters for runners. Uh, the pandemic has caused a whole lot of situations for different industries and different, professions and different engagements. And the athletics community has not been spared. It's all a question of finding strategies on how to try and get back, into places, to situations that people can continue to enjoy or partake of the activities that they like, that they enjoy most, which is running. Uh, we all know that, of course, that the Olympics that had to change this season because of the situation. But for most elite athletes and high performers, it's been a case of trying to tick over, waiting for what the Olympic cycle, the Olympic year would look like, come 2021, whenever that is possible. Now, it's difficult enough if you have just one event that you're preparing for, 100 meters, 200 meters, high jump. There is already a whole lot of stuff that you have to do in the struggle with. However, you want to possibly start thinking about if this is an issue, if this is a problem, how much more of a problem is it for multi-eventers? Now, multi-eventers in track and field relates to athletes that perform or compete in more than just one event. It could be the decathletes that are doing 10 events, and that's for men, or the heptathletes that are doing 7 events, which is for women. Those involve various demands on their technical components. They have to be able to jump, they have to be able to throw, they have to be able to sprint. And the variation of those throw, jump, and sprint is different, between the decathlete and the heptathlete. Now, to help me have a discussion on this and see how athletes and coaches are coping, I have a good old friend of mine, a veteran coach of Great Britain athletics, joining me after the break, just to shed some experiential light as well as some reactive and proactive strategies that he is using together with his athletes, to find, basically, to be able to cope, to be available when the competition starts. Dennis Johnson, welcome to the show. It's the Power Hour show brought to you by Perfect Balance Clinic. Thank you for being able to join me. Welcome.
It's my pleasure.
Multi-eventers, I'm sure, single eventers have got multi-problems with the pandemic. What is the situation like for multi-eventers, with the lockdown and, the whole restricted return to activity? What is that summarily overview for you? What is that looking like?
Right. Well, can I say multi-eventers in my phraseology are people who do several events. People who do a decathlon or heptathlon are combined eventers. So there is in my view, there's a significant difference. And I coach both multi-eventers, some people who do 2 or 3 events, but also over the last 20 years, 25 years, I've coached quite a number of decathletes and heptathletes. As you said, it's always a challenge. You've got to balance one event against another, their strengths, their weaknesses, and so on. and that's in normal times. Of course, now it's even more difficult because we don't have full facilities. Do you want to know what the situation has been with me?
Well, let's wait for that one. I'm sure we will get to that one, Dennis. But first, just to share with us some of your experiences. How did Dennis Johnson end up coaching and being involved with multi-eventers? How did it start? When did it start?
Okay. Well, originally it started, as you've inferred, many decades ago. I took a middle distance group when I was teaching at school and moved on to the club scene, and then started coaching high jump. High jump, I moved to Bedford, where a young lady straight from school jumped 145. And I started high jump because they said, we haven't got a high jump coach. And I was qualified. She went on to become a British indoor record holder, jumping 191. And a lot of other high jumpers followed, including, well, it seems recently, but quite a few years ago now, Rob Mitchell, who jumped 225. I then was asked to coach a hurdler who was doing 400-meter hurdles, or wanting to. Now, she could hurdle, and she needed some help with the running. So I started coaching her, and then took on a few more hurdlers, and eventually just gradually moved into combined events, particularly with a veteran decathlete who was 50 at the time. He went on to win a bronze medal at the World Masters at 55. And then a girl came along to me as a high jumper, Chloe Cousins, and she was quite good at a number of different events. So we went to pentathlon, and then heptathlon. She won English Schools International, and went to the World Junior Championships in Annecy. And then really it blossomed from there. I spent 3 years coaching Louise Hazel while she was in her last years at school before she went to university. Ros Gontz, who scored 5.8. Louise, those of you who know her, was Commonwealth champion later, but that was a long while after I'd coached her. And I was very fortunate to be involved with the Great Britain team as a team coach for combined events, and on some of the championships, the World Junior Championships, and also involved with the combined events coaching initiative which Charles Van Comeny set up in about the year 2000. And I was a high jump coach for that, but I learned a great deal from all the other coaches who were on there, so that I was better able to support the athletes that I personally coached.
Extensive experience there, Dennis. Working both with juniors and working with developers, and working also there with performers. Performers as those that are working, at the major events level.
I can't really hear you, Stanley.
Okay. I was saying extensive experience there, Dennis. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, that's better.
Okay, then. Yeah. Extensive experience there, Dennis. For you having been able to work, with the different levels of athletes, beginners, developers, and performers, as it were. Now, with multi-eventers, is there any particular event that you yourself have had a preference for?
My best event, you say? Yeah. High jump. And that's where, initially I would have said that was my most, or the athletes I've coached have been most successful. A number of English schools titles, junior titles, 3As and so on, and internationals. But for me, combined events is the challenge. It's a bit like a test match compared with a one-day 2020 blast. with combined. I mean, I love the high jump, don't get me wrong. And, you know, the thrill of somebody jumping, you know, a really good jump, you know, PB or British record or whatever, that's very special. And it's in the moment. But the combined events is slow burn. It's 2 days. It's not a cricket 2020 blast like the test match we've just seen. It's multifaceted, multi-layered. And as a coach, you know, you've really got to apply yourself to the preparation in every event, the balance between events, their strengths, their weaknesses, strengthen their weaknesses, maintain and further strengthen their strengths. And during the competition, there is so much more you can do. You really work with the athlete through the competition. And I find it very, very challenging, but also very, very satisfying.
Mm, mm, mm. Now, it's difficult enough, you know, under the circumstances, it's difficult enough, Dennis, under the circumstances of the lockdown and restricted training. Tell us what the challenge is for a multi-event coach, you know, who finds themselves coaching a heptathlete or a decathlete, but some of the events that they probably think, you know, they need assistance from other coaches. How do you get along? You surely don't coach all 7 or 10 events, do you?
Sorry, you're asking what's happening with lockdown, what I've been doing. Yeah.
Before the lockdown, how do you get your multi-event athletes to excel in all the different events that you probably, you know, your favorite is high jump, but how do you get them to excel in all other events?
Okay, yeah, good question. Well, I make use of some other specialists, people who I have great respect for in their event. I mean, I believe you can't, a combined event athlete can't go to 6 different coaches or 8 different coaches, and because each coach will want that athlete to become a specialist in their event and shot put 3 times a week or whatever it is. So as a combined event coach, I've got to be in charge of the scene and decide which events they need to work on particularly, and how to work on them. Having said that, I've always made great use of other people whose knowledge and experience, expertise is greater than mine. Mike McNeil, who many of you I hope will know, who's the very top javelin coach in the country, in my opinion, has been a good friend of mine for nearly 30 years. In fact, he was best man at my wedding. Mike, fantastic javelin coach, but also discus and also shot. So when he was at Peterborough, which was less than an hour away, I used to regularly take, probably every week through the summer, 2 or 3 of my heptathletes or decathletes to him to do sessions with him. And he taught me a fantastic amount. And he still does. I was on the phone to him yesterday for 3/4 of an hour, mainly talking about which javelin we ought to buy and how training was going and so on. So Mike, I openly acknowledge all the help he has given me. On long jump, I learnt a lot from people like Daryl Bunn, on the camps. But now I've got an outstanding long jump coach here in Bedford, Ian Roberts, and he doesn't take all of the sessions, but he takes some of the sessions with the athletes, so that then I can learn from him and follow that up. Because ultimately in a competition, he will not be there. Mike will not be there. It will be me. I have got to manage the situation and advise the athlete. So Ian, on hurdles, Bob Smith, who's over at Cambridge, superb hurdles coach. And I met up with him at one of these training camps 20 years ago. He was coaching Grace Clements, and Grace said to me, "Can I come over and you can do some high jump. We come over to Bedford with Grace. You can do some high jump with her. So I said, that's fine, Bob. I said, so long as you do hurdle sessions with my people. And we're still in touch. Again, I was speaking to him a couple of days ago, and I take my athletes over to Bob for occasionally, once a month maybe, or Bob will come here, and so that we can get that specialist input. On pole vault, I do not coach pole vault. I mean, technically, I have the little card which says I coach it, but I wouldn't presume to do that. That's something else. And I've got an excellent coach here, Simon Eastwood, who coaches the pole vaulters, the decathletes that have to do pole vault. So I use a range of expertise. The other events, say high jump, I feel I'm, very good. Although in the past I've spent a lot of time with Mike Holmes, who's excellent. For my money, again, the best high jump coach in the country. If you look at his record of people who done, set British records, and I learned a lot from him, as well as going way back. Ron Murray. You'd have to be very old to remember Ron. So I've learned from other people. I feel I'm competent in middle distance. I'm competent in 400. I get some help with another colleague on sprints, Alan Adamson. That way we cover everything. The decathletes do most of their work with me, apart from pole vault. Apart from pole vault, probably 90% of their work is with me, but I make use of these specialists. I think in a way it's a bit like a GP. I'm the GP and I can do lots of things, but if I need to send them to a consultant, then that's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes across there, Dennis, as it's a management of interdisciplinary, input into the development or performance of an athlete. Now, what would you say to, single event coaches that seem to struggle, with getting input from different experts and different practitioners to be able to make an input into the development of their athlete? There you are as a multi-event coach, engaging other coaches, other expertise for the sake of developing this athlete so that they can reach their potential. How do you manage it? What would you say to other athletes, coaches rather, out there who probably struggle with the whole notion of bringing in and engaging other expertise to develop areas of their athlete that they themselves might be struggling with?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you have to have trust in the person you are asking. There are many expert coaches around in their various fields, but to be perfectly honest, there are some that I think I'm not too happy with that coach. I'm not too happy. So there's got to be trust between the two. Otherwise, you would feel that the coach you're going to might take your athlete away and say, "Oh, if you come to me, the grass is greener on this side of the fence." So you've got to be confident. But if you want to progress as a coach and you want your athlete to progress, you have to learn more. I've been watching most of the webinars which England Athletics have been doing. I've not been able to watch all of them, but a lot of them, I've sort of signed up for, and I've watched them and made notes and think, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'll try that. Other things are confirming what I already know or reminding me. So you should seek advice from others, but always go with your athlete. I mean, years ago, there used to be camps, and they would ask the athlete along, and not the coach. Now, if you do that, that the coach is not going to learn, B, the athlete will probably forget 50% of what they've been told or what has been suggested to them, because there's a lot of responsibility on the expert coach dealing with the athlete. So whenever I was asked to a club or asked to coach somebody, I'd say, yes, that's fine, but you must come too. And then, because you're going to spend most of your time coaching them, not me. I see them once a month or whenever it is. So you must learn as well and follow it up. So with single event coaches, I would follow the same thing. If I did as a high jump coach, I did. I was very lucky in 1976 when Anne-Marie Devalle, who was my top high jumper, was invited to what were called the Olympic camps. Mike Winch set them up, and Ron Murray was there. And for the first time, they invited coaches, and I went to every one of them. And not only I learned, but I was enthused, and I came back, feeling I know more, I can do more for the athlete that I'm with. So you've got to use other people and get all the knowledge you can from other people.
Cheers, Dennis. There, I like what you seem to be emphasizing there, which is trust. It's important that there is a conduit of trust between coaches and practitioners, other practitioners. If we're going to to help develop athletes to their full potential. Now, I've heard about coaches. How about other practitioners, say from the healthcare, from the healthcare end of performance or development? Your physiotherapists, your strength and conditioning coaches. What is your relationship with them? How do you go about engaging them, if you do at all?
Yeah, can I just go back to using other people's expertise? One of the great things about the combined events camps, which Charles Van Comedy set up, was that we all went there, we shared our experiences and our knowledge. No one was saying, "Oh, this is my athlete, you don't talk to them." Nobody was saying, "I'm the one who's coaching this, you're a rival athlete, I won't help you." We shared it and we were part of a team. And I think that's very true in combined events. And it's true with combined eventers as athletes, that they all know they have strengths and weaknesses. They all understand that, they might fall down and they've got to get up again. So there's that shared experience, which I don't think you get with other events. And I mean, and this is great. Ultimately, of course, it may be that an athlete will move on to another coach. And I've had this. Rob Mitchell eventually, and Anne-Marie stayed with me for life till she retired, 28. Rob Mitchell, British Athletics tried to move him away from me, which, I was very upset about, obviously. But ultimately, he went to my good friend, Mike Holmes. I said to him, if you really want to make it, to jump 235 and not 225, I said, there's only one person in the country who can do that for you. But he lives in Liverpool, and you've got to move there. And he did. Unfortunately, and Mike said this afterwards to me, he said, well, I'm really sorry. We liaised after that, and we're still very good friends. He said, I take my hat off to you. He said, I couldn't make him jump any higher than you did. But, there was trust. Louis Hazel went on. Ros Gaunt went on to somebody else. And I was very happy with that, because the people they were going to were better than I was. Darryl Bunn, better than I was. They were living in Birmingham, much better for them to go. And I was happy with that. And Chloe Cousins eventually went to javelin. She's always a very good javelin thrower as well as an excellent high jumper. So she eventually, we realised she wasn't going to improve more in heptathlon, and I've been trying to persuade her to concentrate on javelin. So that happened, and she went to Mike McNeil. So, you've got to be prepared to let athletes move on if you as a coach feel that you've done as much as you can, or the athlete feels, you really have helped me, thank you very much, but I need a bit more. Yeah. So, but there's got to be this trust and support, and the athlete should always obviously appreciate the first ever coach who brought them from school into the club, because without them they wouldn't have got anywhere.
Yeah.
So sorry, I interrupted your question. Physio and strength conditioning.
That's right. That's good insight to hear that as well. That side of that side of your engagement. It's nice to hear that. But maybe I would draw your attention also to other practitioners. Strength and conditioning coaches, sports therapists. The multi-eventers. That's a whole lot of work they do. Surely they would need the services of these other practitioners. Not so? Yeah.
Let's take physios first and so on. Yeah, I mean, I'm appreciating more and more that you need regular physio, regular massage when you have the time, and it depends on time for athletes who are either working full time or in full time education at school rather than university. It's vital, and they've got to pick up any niggles early and deal with them. Again, I'm very fortunate. We've got somebody in Bedford who is an athlete himself. He's an qualified osteopath and physio, and he is excellent. And I'm making more use of him than I have done in recent years. Going back, yes, when Anne-Marie was on the national team, she received help from the international athletes. What I say to most of them is you need a very good all-round diet, all the healthy things, and we go through what that is, and how much more you need. Again, given the time and money and everything else, I have some reservations. Having said that, Stephen, who's the decathlete, 17-year-old decathlete I'm referring to, he is on the youth training program of British Athletics, and that is very good. And they have nutrition. I think they even had them cooking one week, so that when they go to university, they're not going to just, they get used and they know this is what they should be eating. So there, strength and conditioning. I'm afraid I've had some bad experiences with strength and conditioning. In particular, with Chloe Cousins, World Junior Championships. Her best score as an 18-year-old was 5.358 in heptathlon. Not a very fast athlete. Best high jump was 180 though. Best long jump 570. Best hurdle is very windy 1472. Excellent javelin thrower 53 meters. So when she went to Loughborough, I thought I got to get, it's time she did some strength work. She'd not lifted a weight before then. All she'd done was circuits, plyometrics, body weight stuff. Because she lived 40 minutes away, would come over 3 times a week, 4 times a week. How much can you do when you've got 7 events to cater for? So I thought, right, well, I'll get somebody involved in strength and conditioning. And I got somebody involved. I won't name them. But excellent reputation, best person I could think of. And what happened, she got heavier and she got slower. And slower and slower. And for me, that was a lesson. I know most coaches here will say, I'm a heretic. You need to be strong. You've got to lift heavy weights. But for me, and it's interesting, on one of the recent webinars, it might have been Harry Marr, who's coach to Ashley Eaton and 4 other 8,000 decathletes. I think it was him. They said, why do you need to lift heavy weights?
No.
If you lift heavy weights, you're lifting slowly. And I've always had that philosophy. What you do fast. Because the amount of contact time with the ground, the amount of time you high jump from 0 to bar height is minimal. You don't spend half a second, 3/4 of a second lifting a heavy weight and struggling with it. You go smack and up you go and over the bar. And I think that's true in every event. So I'm a bit wary of strength and conditioning coaches. And certainly I would go along with, again, what Harry Miles said, and also Vern Gambetta, world-renowned combined events coach, and say the decathlon coach is in charge. The decathlon coach says what's done. Anthony Minicello said this as well recently in another webinar. I know Tony very well. And he said, yes, he used a nutritionist, he used a strength and conditioning. He consulted with Mike Holmes sometimes. He used javelin thrower, second to Steve Backlund. Can't remember his name. For javelin, he said, but he was in charge. So he went to these people and he said what he wanted. And I think that's how it has to be.
Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned some stellar names there. I had the fortune to work with Vern Gambetta and his philosophy of functional strength training, which I think is something you're alluding to there. I think maybe it's fair for the strength and conditioning coaches to point out that it is not about hypertrophy, which is what we seem to be referring to, making the athletes heavier, because I think that's just one component of strength and conditioning. There's an array of other, interventions that come from that profession and from those professionals. And like any other profession, if the diagnosis is wrong, then the intervention will be wrong in itself. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you're a speed coach, a javelin coach, a high jump coach. If you diagnose it wrong, then the intervention you're going to input towards the athlete in itself will compromise the very output that you're looking for. So yeah, that would be my take on strength and conditioning. But you interest me, Dennis, there with another thought that I'd like to just follow up on, which is you've been around, within the coaching fraternity for quite a bit. Have you seen? Do you think have you seen any transformation, between what coaching used to be and what coaching is now, with the whole sports science, emphasis in providing coaching intervention? Have you seen any changes? Have you felt any changes, across the different generations that you have coached and compatriots, colleagues that you have worked with?
Yeah. If I go back to the early days, in fact, even earlier than I started coaching, when I was at school, very few coaches, very few indeed, and they were almost all middle distance coaches. So there are many more coaches, first of all, and the system now is trying. There are critics, but I think the system now of having first of all the national event coaches, the people, Tom McNabb, Wilf Paish, and Ron Pickering. And those people, they were fantastic coaches, both in technical knowledge and in motivation. And they taught coaches. They travelled across their area and taught in schools, taught teachers, taught coaches. And I benefited from Tom in particular, who was in this area. But it's moved on. And the coaching system now is a bit different. It's more professional. They have set up in recent years with things like webinars, which I think are excellent, a system where coaches can learn much more. But within the coach, I'm not too familiar with the coaching qualifications and the way it's on, but I understand a lot of it is online. You can only learn so much online or listening to people. You need to go out and do it. And, you know, as I say, you need to go and do it with other coaches, with more experienced and knowledgeable coaches, and learn from them. Take it back and apply it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that I think the one thing that coaching, you know, both the philosophy and the practice of coaching, the changes that I would, you know, attest it to is coaching has become more, you know, the development of coaches has moved on much more into mentoring rather than just the educational, you know, input. So coaches are getting experiential, hands-on learning, which I think is a huge thing, which is an important, I think, an important development. Because it's only when you are working with the athlete and learning from other coaches that you know, there is accelerated learning of the relevant and the precise knowledge and the practice and skills that you need to help athletes to develop. So I fully subscribe to that, and I think that is indeed, yeah, I think that's the way to go in the future, definitely.
Yeah. Yesterday, something else you know get from their knowledge. I've been looking for or need to get a 1.75 discus. So yeah, and there are, you will know, but maybe many single event coaches who are not discus coaches won't know there are quite a number of varieties of discus in terms of high spin, low spin, where the weight is distributed at the rim, and so on, flatter rim, fatter rim, narrow rim, and so on. I wasn't aware. I was aware there were different discuses, but not quite this much. So I researched it, came across an article by Stuart Carlaw, and he is England or Midlands discus coach, throws coach. So I got in contact with him. He said, send me some video and I'll help you decide which discus. I'd already, from reading the article, I got a pretty good idea of what sort of discus I needed. But, you know, there is that help out there. And we need to use it because, you know, if you're not an expert, use experts and find out what there is.
Yeah. Yeah. Dennis, I'm going to give you a water break, but when we come back, I'd like you now to focus on the choices, the challenges, and some of what you can perceive as consequences that will come out of all these lockdown type of training, post-pandemic type of training for the multi-eventer. And that here I'm thinking precisely about the heptathlete and the decathlete with the restricted access to return to, you know, to activity. You take a water break.
Yeah, I'm fully watered.
Yeah, welcome back, Dennis. Now, coaching multi-eventers is a challenge, as you have spent the last 30, 40 minutes already showing us and explaining to us there, you know, from the technical components of each discipline, as well as the management of all the processes and the relationships around a multi-eventer. Now, that is difficult in a normal situation. You know, and now with lockdown, what is the scenario like? What is the picture like? And how are you coping? I know coaching, the one thing about coaching is about overcoming situations, overcoming challenges, overcoming barriers that are in the way of the athlete. How is Dennis Johnson, overcoming that with your athletes?
Okay, you could divide the athletes I coach into two groups. A younger group of sort of perhaps 12 to 15 who normally train 2 or 3 times a week. Some of them do combined events, some of them just do hurdles and just do hurdles and long jump, and some of them various things out, and a couple of javelin throwers who just throw javelin. And then I've got the slightly older athletes who are serious heptathletes and decathlete. Everything on March the 17th, everything stopped. And, we were the stadium was closed. I turned up at the stadium, it's locked. We can't get in. So immediately what I did was to write some programs for each of those groups. For the younger group, a lot of exercises, some running, something they could do at home or in the park. And we encouraged them to do that 3 times a week, 4 times a week. As the lockdown eased, I was able to go and see some of them on a 1-to-1 basis. Then it eased again, and we were able to see them on a group of 5. And eased slightly again, and we could use the track. But I'll explain more about that in a moment. With the 3 older athletes, 2 heptathletes and a decathlete, much the same really. I wrote some programs for them. I had them do a lot of running and a lot of circuits because that's all they could, and some plyometrics, because that's all they could do. Stephen was running 5 days a week. When I say running, I don't mean just going out for a plod. He was doing sessions which were related to 400 meters or related to 1500 meters or related to sprinting. So over the local park, he'd run 6 times 50 meters for his sprint session. He'd run 4 times 200 or 2 times 800. So, that was that. And that's as much as we could do. When I was able to go and see him, I went over because he was at school and needed to be in school by 8:30 and preferred to train in the morning rather than after school. I was going to his village at 7 a.m. 3 times a week or 4 times a week, and we were running. I then, an ex-athlete of mine, ex-decathlete, who's a school teacher, I managed to borrow some javelins and 2 under-17 javelins and 2 discuses from him at 1.5. Stephen's aim this year was to go to the European Under-18 Championships in decathlon. For those who are not familiar with that, that means that you use under-17 implements. So that was fine. Whilst we had that as our goal, that was fine. And we'd be throwing 3 times a week in the local recreation ground. And we've continued to do that during holidays. Why 7 o'clock? Well, 7 o'clock, of course, in the morning, there aren't many children running around to be speared. There are a few dog walkers, but they keep out the way, and we've got to know them. But if we went at 9 o'clock, we might be, having a few interesting discussions with mothers or fathers and their children. My basic philosophy has been we do what we can with whatever we've got as much as we can. So in recent weeks, or until very recently, it was discus with underweight implements. It was javelin with underweight implements, running, abs and back and core and circuits and plyometrics. That's what we were able to do. The track then opened on a very limited basis. The Fusion, who run all the facilities in Bedfordshire, Bedford and leisure facilities, are still on furlough. So they were just open. The building wasn't open, but the club got an agreement with the council to open up for 3 hours on a Tuesday, 3 hours on a Wednesday, Thursday, and 3 hours Sunday morning, which sounds great, except that they decided that no athlete should have more than 2 hours. Now, if you're a decathlete who normally would spend, well, last summer we were spending 10 to 12 hours a week at the track, it's a bit limited, and you've got 10 events. Also, we had no access to any equipment. The only equipment I had in terms of hurdles was 4 hurdles, which a parent had made for his son, and they were 2'6" and could be adjusted to 2'9". Stephen, if he was going to under 18, was 3 feet, and if he's going now, he's got to go to under 20 because there's no more under 18 competitions available. 3 feet 3. So until last week, we didn't have any hurdles we could use at the track, and we can still only do 2 hours a week at the track, even though on a Sunday morning, 70% of the zones, the throwing zones, the long jump, and the track are not used. I hope that's about to change, but that's been very difficult. I've also, so therefore I've looked at, we haven't been able to high jump, haven't been able to pole vault. We couldn't throw the shot either because the recreation ground, the ground was so soft, it was, making dangerous holes. So I've managed to go down to St Albans for the last 3 weeks, where we met you on Thursday, and we've been able to spend 2.5 hours there doing high jump, hurdles with proper hurdles, javelin, discus, all last week shot, and a track session. That's what I want. That's what a combined event athlete needs. Doesn't just want, he needs, but he needs that sort of freedom to do what they need several times a week. I've never, except if we've gone to a specialist, only ever done one event. We always do 3 or 4 events in a 2-hour session. Now, I was hoping with our track going to open up a bit more, we were going to be allowed more hours. And then yesterday, I got a phone call to say, because Bedford has become an area of concern, the track is closed for the next 2 weeks. Wow. So, with somebody who's we're planning a decathlon, either the 26th, 27th of September in Belfast, or the following week in Spain, an under 20 decathlon. I haven't got a track for the next 2 weeks. We still haven't, he hasn't pole vaulted. I don't pole vault. You understand that. He hasn't I did try it once. I managed, 210, and then pulled a muscle, but it was only about 10 years ago. So he hasn't pole vaulted. Fortunately, the high jump came back just like that. Within the first session, he was jumping beautifully. He hasn't thrown proper weight implements yet, though I've now got an 800-gram javelin, and I'm going to borrow 2 more from Mike. We need to buy a discus because we can't get a 175 discus, and I've now got a couple of 6K shots. So challenging. If you guys doing single events think it's challenging, try doing 10 events in a normal state of affairs, but in lockdown, that's it. But then there are much greater tragedies. There are tragedies, thousands of people dying. So we have to make the best of what we've got. And if we get to the end of September, the other thing is competition. Yeah. If you're a sprinter, there are a number of meetings where there are sprints. If you're a thrower, there are a number of meetings where there are throws. Just go along, sign up, go along and throw. If you're a long jumper, number of meetings you can long jump. Not many high jump meetings or pole vault meetings. But if you're a combined eventer, normally in the course of a season before a major event, decathlon, we would do each of the events a couple of times, some events hurdles more often. If I think he needs to do 2 or 3 high jump or 4 or 5 discus, we do. We can adjust it and we can get that. There's hardly any competition. If we we managed to book into Chelmsford, 30th of August. Long jump was the only option still available. Do I go 2 hours to Chelmsford just for 3 long jumps?
Yeah. So what is going to be just in closing, Dennis? Thanks very much for all that.
Can I just say one other thing? Yeah. If we get to the end of September and he hasn't been able to compete, but his training is good, I am willing to take the chance that we go into the competition without preparation. He's a very focused young man. He did 7 PBs out of 8 events at the English schools last year. So long as I'm happy with the training, if we've only had a couple of sprints, a couple of hurdles, a long jump, we'll go for it. Now, how many of you would do that? How many of you single event coaches would go to a major competition without having any preparation? Do it. Yeah.
Well, you see, I think that's why Dennis Johnson is the man, for the multi-eventers. Your knowledge, your experience there is very, very extensive indeed. And you are calling on all that experience to continue to help your athletes, even in these very stringent and very difficult circumstances there. And for you to even be thinking about a competition, I find it very, very, amazing, as it were, because you haven't been able to train completely and fully, and yet there's an opportunity for a competition. You are considering it and making the necessary adjustments and strategies just to keep the athlete ticking over. Now, in closing, Dennis, now I know you are a very generous coach. If there are other multi-event coaches out there and multi-event athletes listening to you right now, what advice would you give them, on going forward in this situation? What 2 things could you pass on as a tip for a coach or a multi-event athlete?
Right. First of all, you never give up. If you give up, what's the point? Yeah. You've got to apply yourself. Now, obviously, if somebody was going for the Olympics, that went. So your major aim is gone. For Stephen, his major aim was the European under-18. For another of my athletes, my woman of Vet 60, who was 3rd in the European heptathlon a couple of years ago, she was going to go to the World Championships. Gone. No competition. But you train with the future in view. You've got to say, it might not happen, but we have to focus. And whatever you do this year will stand you in good stead for next year. So as things stand at the moment, we are still focused on going to Belfast, on going to or Spain. We won't do 2 decathlons in 2 weeks. So we're focused on doing that. We need to pole vault. If it hasn't pole vaulted, there's no point in going. But if we can get some pole vault sessions in, you do it. So I would say to everyone, do as much as you can of what you can. And if you do that, you'll put your athlete in a good position. And then when you can do other things, start doing. If you can't use blocks, do what you can without blocks. If you can't use hurdles and you're a hurler, do what you can without. Do other things, but always with the focus that when things are available, you can move on to that, and you'll be fit and healthy and ready to move on to it.
Dennis, you have been super duper. You've been very generous with your advice, your experience, and your inspiration. Very informative. And I'm sure one or two people out there, would have found something that they would have needed for them just to continue with their love for multi-events. So what remains for me is to say thank you for joining me tonight. And I hope, what you're looking for, the poll vote and all these other events, do come to pass, and you have an opportunity for you and your athletes to have a go at those events in preparation for the competition.
Well, thank you very much, Stanley. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you for a whole hour.
This is audio there, but anyway, from me, this is it. Bye-bye, Dennis. Bye-bye, everyone.
And I hope people have